So my name is Jason Killam. I'm a detection engineer for Red Canary. And I'm going to talk about malicious sign code and like why we need to revoke these and how this helps everybody. So this is kind of a sequel, and Scooby-Doo helped me with some of the information and research and context for this slide. So there's a lot of thanks to him for helping with this. It's sort of a sequel to that, and EV cert, and they're basically for code signing certificates. You purchase a key from a certificate signer like SSL.com, Sectigo, those kind of places, this kind of gives you a level of trust with your binary. This usually prevents, code signing certificate prevents the smart screens pop-ups and the warnings from Microsoft saying, hey, this is some untrusted stuff. You sure you want to run this kind of thing? Next slide. So for EV certificates, I thought about leaving this out, but the reason I want to include the cost for these certificates, if it's a standard cert, it's $350 to $500, and if it's an EV cert, it actually costs $1,500 to $3,000. So these guys have to make these fake shell companies and all this stuff, all this work that goes into this, and they have to pay this money, and then they have to charge somebody else, to sell the certificate on. So all this, if we can revoke these certificates, cost them actual money, and this is the actual dollar figures to costing this stuff. Hit it. So this is my first example. This is Vidar. This is a stealer called Vidar. On the left is our bad one in red, and you can kind of see it's got some generic information about it. I think Monkeysoft is the name in that one. It's just downloader. It was actually pretending to be an installer for a piece of software called Notion, which I think is a home automation kind of software thing. And on the bottom, you can see the signer. This is most of my screenshots are from VirusTotal. So this is kind of where I usually go to when I'm looking at a binary. So your signer here in this case is Andres Diaz. And on the right, you got your legitimate binary, which is not directly related, but it's a better example of a good binary, is MS Build from Microsoft. So it has the metadata that tells you it's MS Build. It's specific about what it is. It has a pretty good, it's signed by Microsoft, so it has that in the name. Hit it. So for a code signing certificate, you have your name. So this is the friendly name you kind of use to identify who signed the code, who made the code, who's the developer for it. So, and then you have your certificate authority. So in this case, I think it's Sectigo. Actually, this is one reason I used, for the previous example, used MS Build, because the malicious binary was also signed, and then the legitimate signer for Notion are both Sectigo. So it was really actually smart on the actor to choose something that also is from Sectigo, so it's harder to compare apples to apples with those. And then you have your valid to from cert date window, and then your certificate thumbprint. So the valid to from is kind of helpful if you're trying to establish a timeline of events. If you find a malicious binary on the box, and the to from cert is recent, then you know it's a recent binary if you don't have that kind of historical context. So I used to do a lot of incident response, and it's always nice to have those timelines. And then the thumbprint, that's the thing you want to focus on when you're trying to get this stuff revoked. That's at the bottom, and the serial number. Something I work with Matt Graber, and he pointed out something interesting is you can spoof one of these, and I don't remember which, and I should remember that, but you can't spoof the other. So I think it's the thumbprint is spoofable. So they're both important, and they both individually identify it, but I think focus on the serial number for this. Next. So, like I said, these are kind of inconsistencies with your kind of malicious stuff. On the left is the bad one. It's a usually really short timeline from creation to being seen in the wild. So for VirusTotal, on this timeline, you have your creation time, your signature date, first seen in the wild. I'm not going to talk about that because it's confusing as hell, because VirusTotal doesn't make any sense. It's shows MS Build a year before it was created, which doesn't make sense. But anyways, first submission, all those last three are specific to VirusTotal. When it was first uploaded, the last time it was uploaded, and whenever if you're in VirusTotal and you say rerun this binary, that's the last analysis date. So yeah, so with the MS Build example, you got a much longer timeline of activity. So it gives that signed binary more credence that it's probably legitimate, because if it was bad, it probably would have been revoked by now. But I've seen examples where stuff sit on its valid signers for a long time. Next. So this is kind of a screenshot from this binary on an actual box, and you can see it kind of does a couple things. This binary is called Notion Updater.exe, but like I showed before, it's just really generic, so they can package it as whatever piece of software they want to pretend to be. But you see it hits, and you guys are familiar with Vidar, it usually talks to Telegram and Steam. And I know in the Steam community example, it actually, you go to the profile, the URL it goes to, and it's the profile picture is just an IP address. So you're like, oh, that's kind of a weird name to choose, but whatever. But then that points it to the actual C2 to send the data, so that the Steeler developer, whoever's pushing this out, can change that whenever they want. So yeah, whenever you're looking at binaries like this, it's for me when I'm doing analysis, because I'm doing that kind of analyst work. I kind of think, why would a binary for an installer for home software be talking to Steam or Telegram and this other stuff? And like, what's this random IP address it's connecting to, as opposed to like an actual domain? Hit it. So our next example is Yellow Cuckatoo. It's kind of one we see a lot as well, and it's kind of in the wild a lot. It's off. They kind of come and go, but. On the left, you got your signer information. In this case, it's Heartcraft Brewery, so it's kind of weird that a place that makes beer would be making software for that's a PDF icon. And on the right is, yeah, like our timeline here. Again, it's a very short timeline. I pretty much took this probably the last analysis date. I can't quite see it from here, but it's only a couple days. So it's pretty obvious if there's some weirdness going on here, and this binary just got put in the wild. So, yep, next. So yeah, if you just Google it, like I find a lot of stuff. A lot of the times, if I'm kind of in Intel, but not in Intel, but like I'm really good at Intel when it's on Google. So if you just Google the Heartcraft Brewery, you find this Twitter post from Squibbly Doo, and it actually shows, hey, this is kind of weird that a brewery is signing a binary, and yeah. Next. So. Call to action, like I said, I have a good example here. Russian Panda, I can't remember where she works, but I think it's ESET. But her team revoked the certificates for DFAC Loader, which is a really hard malware name to pronounce. But the developer had to basically pay everybody back for because their certs were revoked, and she that's the English translation because it was all in Russian. And you got some links here. Those are just some examples for SSL.com and Sectigo. For Sectigo, you have to send it to an email. For SSL.com, they have an actual web form you fill out. And yes, and they'll usually rely on like malware repositories like Malware Bazaar and stuff like that. And then Squibbly Doo has a tool on GitHub that actually you can just give it the hash on VirusTotal. You don't have to download it or actually have the file. You just have to have the hash. You just provide it the hash. It'll pull down all the information about it and basically make you an email that you can send to them and give you the instructions on how to get that cert revoked. Next. So yeah, so if you're going to revoke these certs, the things you need to include a name and email, just contact info. Those will usually help them if they're not sure why it needs to be revoked. Some stuff like non-binaries, like MSIX files and malicious signed JavaScript is a little harder to explain to them because the certificate's not readily visible if you search VirusTotal. And then the certificate thumbprint serial, and then the reason why. And I usually sometimes you have to get really specific about it. Like I said, if it's on Malware Bazaar and it's really obvious it's bad, they'll probably just revoke it. In some examples, you might have to explain the attack chain and how it works so that maybe they can replicate it or something on their end. And providing all that information up front will shorten that time to revocation. I think with the example of MSIX files, if the cert is revoked, that installer will not work, period. So it really screws up their day. Next. Yep, that's it. And my slides are will be on GitHub, but the Wi-Fi here has been kind of spotty, so I haven't had time to upload them.